The universe isn't just out there, it's interacting with you. Claim your power by embracing the unknown. This is Tracy with Tracy Talks, and I'm here to ignite your curiosity. Don't just listen, embrace it. There was my life before astrology and my life after astrology. I see the world so differently now that I have incorporated the planets in the sky, the stars in the heaven. It simply felt like things were happening. I didn't understand why. I didn't have control over anything. And I felt like, somehow it felt like I was whitewater rafting. And I was just being tossed and turned, and I was floating out of control. And now there is my life after introducing astrology. One of the hardest periods of my life was going through a relationship and a marriage, and then seeing all of it break down and fall apart. There were so many things that I felt like were out of my control, and I was trying to grasp them, and I was trying to stop things from happening. But I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what the cause was. And I was in the relationship with someone else. And it felt like at times that we had conflicting views of the world and of where we wanted to go and who we were. And I can probably admit that both of us were going through things that we didn't know how to communicate. And certainly we didn't know how to communicate to each other. Looking back now, applying astrology, I can see a progression in how our relationship was flowing. People talk about the Saturn return, and there's probably this general understanding that between the ages of 28 and 29, we go through this Saturn return period, and essentially it's like a growing up. What are you going to do when you grow up? But what people don't understand is essentially every relationship has a chart. The moment that you got together with a partner, a friend, a spouse, any type of job, everything has this inception chart or birth chart like we do. The moment something comes together, that is a moment that we can look at in the heavens, and we can detach from it and look at it then in cycles. And when somebody is talking about a Saturn return, that is essentially the moment you're born, your Saturn is located in a specific part of your chart. It's on a degree point, it's in a house, it's in a specific location in your birth chart when you're born. And what that Saturn return means, it's going to take 28 to 29 years to travel all the way around your chart. And at that full return, it's going to be back at that exact same location when you were born. And that is that moment when you do feel this imminent pressure like, I need to get busy doing things. But I don't always hear people talk about the different stages. A Saturn return has 3 other different points that ask each of us to change just a little bit. At the 7-year point, we reach the first square. And what that means is that Saturn has traveled 90 degrees. It's a 90-degree square point. And Saturn is now asking us to do something. So at the age of 7, when we are growing up, we are having our first Saturn square. We're no longer a small child. Typically, we take on more responsibilities. Typically, we have matured to the point where we are given more things. We have more freedom. Our relationships also have that same first Saturn square. And I was talking to somebody about their relationship, and this person was like, the first 7 years were great. We were great. And when you think about being a child, when you're under 7, you're not responsible for anything. You can do whatever you want. You have the freedom. You don't have any responsibilities. You can get all the toys out. Nobody expects you to pick them up. Everything is great. You're learning things. You're exploring things. Everything just feels really good. And then that 7-year itch comes along. And you know what? Something changed. Things don't feel as good. And when you're in a relationship and you don't understand astrology, you don't understand the cycles. And I look back to my own relationship because I didn't practice astrology when I was in my marriage. That would have been very helpful. But when you don't have those tools, you don't understand that those first 7 years are like the first 7 years that each of us have when we're small. But then when you hit 7 years, Saturn is now asking you to move into a different phase. You're supposed to take what you have learned in the first 7 years, and you're supposed to reevaluate what you liked in that first 7 years and what do you want to take forward? What do you want to grow upon? It's interesting when I hear people talk about relationships sometimes, and everybody wants the party. Everybody wants just every day to be filled with sunshine and joy and parties like a birthday party. That isn't life. And so this 7 year to 14 years, Saturn is asking you to take what you learned and build upon it. And this is just in a hypothetical relationship, because when you have a partnership, each of you are going through your own stuff. The Saturn in the sky that was used when you got married is also impacting each of your Saturns. So both of you are being asked to change at this 7-year point. So you've got one changing and the other changing, and now the relationship is being asked to change. And when you don't understand this, it feels like the world is coming to an end. You don't understand why you don't feel the same. You don't understand why your partner is acting different. You don't understand why you can't communicate in the same ways. You don't understand why you can't just have that party anymore. And then, as we keep going along, and another 7 years ticks off, and we get around to that 14, 15-year mark, and now the Saturn has progressed into a full opposition, meaning now this original Saturn is being directly opposite of the progressed Saturn. And so it's like there's this intense conversation where they are facing each other off. Do you remember when you were 14 or 15 years old? And how grown up you felt like you were, and how, you know what, I know what I need. I don't need anybody to give me any rules. I can make up my own rules. I can do what I want. You can't tell me anything. And that is this Saturn opposition. It happens in our individual charts. It happens in our relationship charts. And there's this squaring off of beliefs, of ideas, and essentially, in a relationship chart, it is this opportunity to reevaluate what is working, what isn't working. What do you want to take to the next phase? How do you want to grow? How do you want the relationship to grow? I mean, if we look at statistics, a lot of marriages do not even make it to this point, or make it to that 7-year point and really hit a hump in 7 years. And then we've got 10 to 12, which is in the middle of that opposition. And a lot of them really fall apart in there. They don't even get to that opposition because they didn't understand what happened at the 7-year mark. They don't know why they felt like they were blindsided. They don't know why everything felt like every day was a rainstorm. Like, why can't we just have those good times back? So there's a lot of relationships that don't even make it to the opposition. After that opposition, we have another 7 years and we're getting to 21. Remember when you were a 21-year-old, and how was your attitude at that point? We were coming into ourselves. We could see a path forward. There's still a lot of pressure to know exactly who we are and what we want. And we're trying to apply things. We're kind of sad that freedom from being a child, a teenager, is gone. We're sad that we have to show up to work. We're sad that we have to do all these adult things, that we have to pay bills. Like, why can't we just go back? Why can't we go back to that, teenage version where we were just hanging out with friends? And then if you apply those same concepts to a marriage, when you hit that 21-year mark, there's very similar themes that show up. And again, if you've been with somebody and you haven't been actively reviewing and assessing your relationship as it grows, if you don't check in and you're going through your own things and you don't take care of your own things and then you bring them into the relationship, and then say, for instance, you're somebody who doesn't want to talk about your own things, and then you project it on the marriage, you project it on the relationship, on your partner. Can you see how muddied everything gets? And you don't know what the cause is. You don't know what's right and what's wrong. You've got all of these feelings because we're all going through our own Saturn cycles in the midst of our own relationship Saturn cycles. And they're not separate. And your partner's going through stuff, and it's not separate. And then let's go on to another 7 years. From 21 to 28, 29. And as an adult, how did we feel at that point? I know how I felt. I felt this unbelievable ticking. And it was like, this is getting serious. I am not an adult. I'm going into my 30s. I was terrified that I didn't have my life mapped out. I had some regrets. I had some things that were confusing. I didn't know what to do with those. But it was this straddling between identities. And then if we think about that and apply that to a marriage, it's kind of like a reckoning is coming on. This 28, 29 years of a marriage, and it feels heavy. The planet of Saturn is really asking you, is this really what you want? And so many people see Saturn as this planet like your grandfather, who's kind of grumpy, who doesn't want to change, and it's a structure. And it's a very defined structure, and it feels heavy. It feels serious. It's not light and fluffy. It doesn't want to go out and party. It's the planet that really sets the tone, that this is the one that's driving people to go to work and be productive and show up. What I didn't understand at the time was when I was in a marriage and things were happening and I was changing and our relationship was changing, I just had no idea that I was ultimately in the process of growing. Growing isn't always fun and it isn't always easy. But now when I look at my relationships, I look at myself through this process of growing. I can look and see what's being highlighted in my life right now and what areas do I need to focus on? And now when I think back, imagine if I had had this information when I was in the marriage. I was feeling that 7-year transition. And instead of being scared about it, instead of feeling like I've done something wrong, instead of being angry at my partner or angry at all of this stuff, I mean, I can only speculate how it could have been different. But when I look at things through astrology, I now understand that somebody's not trying to punish me, but we're growing and we're changing and we're building this together. And these Saturn squares, these 90-degree angles every 7 years, is really this reckoning point where we are just being asked to check in and grow up. Move to the next phase. Moving to the next phase doesn't sound as harsh as you have to grow up, but we can't stay in that 0 to 7 years forever. We can take aspects of that. We can try to incorporate ways of having fun. We can make sure that we have time together with this person, that make sure that the relationship is still the priority. Like, is this how we want to go forward? And now that I look at all of my relationships through this, I look at my jobs through the same perspective. Anybody that's been at a job, I have a friend that at 30 years, the job terminated. That was a Saturn cycle. I would interpret that as Saturn came around and said, you have learned all that you can learn here. And now life is wanting you to learn something else. Someone terminating your position doesn't feel good. But when I look at things through this Saturn cycle, and if you detach from the personal aspect of it, the hurt, the wounds, whatever else you're feeling, and look at it as, okay, I've graduated. What next? I was talking to a friend about her relationship, and that's what brought on this episode. She was like, the first 7 years were great. I'm sure they were. But that's not how the relationship is always going to be. There comes a point when we are typically going to be asked to mature and grow and expand. But the hard part is we don't always grow and mature and expand in the same direction as the person we're with. And that's really what I wanted to share today, is understanding these cycles in life. For me, it has helped to release this burden that I feel like a lot of us have, like that there's this weight on our shoulders that we have to like hold everything together and we have to do all of these things. And sometimes things are just in a cycle. And when we know that there's a cycle, we know that there's a beginning and a middle and an end. Understanding that at some point, this is going to change, it's going to evolve, and it's going to end. And then we're going to be asked to get into another cycle and another cycle. Just knowing that has relieved so much of this anxiety that I don't feel like now I have a map. There's a map for me. It would have been nice if I had had this map earlier on in the life, but you know what? It is what it is. And I just hope this has helped a little bit in understanding the cycles that we're all living in. Thank you for listening to this episode of Tracy Talks. Remember to rate, review, and subscribe, and share with others who would enjoy listening to this podcast. Friends can find Tracy Talks available on iTunes, Spotify, Substack, and YouTube. Hit me up on Instagram and Facebook at More Tracy Talks. And until next time, we meet again.